Have you ever felt like you're carrying invisible wounds that don't allow you to move forward? Those wounds that reopen again and again when you least expect it? That pain that resurfaces in moments of vulnerability, making you wonder, why am I still feeling this after all this time? Today we're going to embark on a deep journey toward inner healing, guided by one of the most revolutionary thinkers in modern psychology, Carl Jung. A man who dedicated his life to understanding the depths of the human soul and how to heal our most hidden wounds. Stay until the end, because in this video you'll not only understand the origin of your emotional wounds from a Jungian perspective, but I'll share with you a powerful healing ritual that has transformed thousands of lives. This isn't just another self-help video. It's an invitation to reconcile with your shadows and finally close those wounds that have remained open for far too long. Carl Jung revolutionized our understanding of human beings by introducing us to the concept of the collective unconscious, shadows, and individuation. But what do these ideas have to do with your emotional wounds? Absolutely everything. According to Jung, each wound you carry isn't simply the result of isolated painful experiences. It's the manifestation of ancestral patterns, archetypes, and rejected aspects of yourself that have been pushed into the shadow. That shadow, far from disappearing, grows in the darkness of your unconscious until it finds ways to manifest in your daily life. Think about a painful pattern that repeats in your life. Maybe it's that feeling of abandonment that resurfaces in every relationship, or perhaps it's that constant fear of not being enough. Jung teaches us that these patterns aren't coincidences or bad luck. They're messages from your unconscious trying to guide you toward healing and integration. And here's the first powerful revelation: your deepest wounds contain the map to your most significant transformation. As Jung said, there is no light without shadow, and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. Your wounds aren't your enemies. They're portals to a deeper understanding of who you truly are. But let's be honest, looking directly at our wounds requires extraordinary courage. It's more comfortable to distract ourselves, deny the pain, or blame others for our suffering. The modern world is precisely designed for this, to keep us in a constant state of distraction that takes us away from our inner selves. Jung observed this phenomenon decades ago, warning that modern society increasingly distances us from our instinctive nature and our connection with the unconscious. We become strangers to ourselves, living lives that satisfy external expectations, but leave a deep emptiness inside. Have you ever wondered why, despite having it all by social standards, you still feel that inexplicable void? Why, despite achievements, relationships, or material possessions, there's a restlessness that doesn't leave you? Jung had a clear answer: you've lost connection with your deeper self. This disconnection isn't trivial. It's the source of many of our most persistent emotional wounds. When we ignore the needs of our soul to fulfill what's expected of us, we create an internal fracture, and that fracture eventually manifests as anxiety, depression, dysfunctional relationships, or a general feeling that something fundamental is missing in our life. Jung expressed it powerfully: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is perhaps one of his most profound and revolutionary teachings. What we don't acknowledge in ourselves doesn't disappear. It simply takes control from the shadows. Every time you've said, "This always happens to me," or "I seem destined to suffer this way," you're unconsciously recognizing the power that your unhealed wounds have over your life. It's not destiny or bad luck. It's the natural result of wounds that remain open, silently bleeding, conditioning your decisions and perceptions without you realizing it. Now, let me ask you a personal question. What would happen if you had the courage to look directly at those wounds? What would happen if, instead of running from the pain, you decided to embrace it as a teacher? Jung discovered that the healing process begins precisely with this act of courage, recognizing and naming our wounds. Not to remain trapped in them, but to initiate a dialogue with those parts of ourselves that have been ignored or rejected. It's what he called confronting the shadow. The shadow, in Jungian terms, isn't simply the bad or negative in us. It's everything we've repressed because it didn't fit with our ideal image or with what our family, culture, and society considered acceptable. And paradoxically, in that shadow, there isn't only pain and wounds. Some of our most powerful gifts are also hidden there. Think about that sensitivity you learned to hide because you were told you were too sensitive, or that creativity you repressed because it wasn't practical according to the success standards instilled in you. Jung teaches us that these qualities don't disappear when we deny them. They simply become distorted and can manifest as wounds or destructive behaviors. For example, that repressed sensitivity can transform into a defensive hypersensitivity that sabotages your relationships. That denied creativity can become relentless criticism toward yourself and others. What we repress doesn't go away, it transforms. And here's one of the most important keys to closing your open wounds. What you can't feel, you can't heal. Every emotion you've avoided, every pain you've buried, every aspect of yourself you've rejected, all of it remains active in your unconscious, creating patterns of suffering that repeat over and over again. Jung was revolutionary in proposing that true healing doesn't consist of overcoming or eliminating our wounds, but in integrating them. In recognizing that those fractured parts of ourselves aren't defects to correct, but fundamental aspects of our humanity seeking reconciliation. This process of integration is what Jung called individuation, the path by which we become whole beings, accepting both our light and our darkness. It's not an easy or quick path. As he himself warned, there is no birth of consciousness without pain. But it's the only path that leads to genuine and lasting healing. Now, let me share something you may not have considered. Your most painful wounds contain a particular wisdom. Jung observed that often, our greatest pain becomes our greatest purpose. That the areas where we've been most wounded are precisely those where we have the most to offer the world once we heal. Have you noticed how people who have overcome addictions often become the best guides for other addicts? Or how someone who has gone through deep grief can develop an extraordinary capacity to accompany others' suffering? This isn't coincidence. It's the psychic alchemy Jung talked about, the transformation of the lead of our wounds into the gold of our unique wisdom. Each wound you've experienced contains a teaching. Each pain hides a gift. But to access that wisdom, you must first be willing to immerse yourself in the depths of your being, to confront what you've avoided, and to embrace what you've rejected. And you're not alone on this journey. Jung discovered that there are universal patterns in the collective unconscious that can guide us in our healing process. These archetypes, the wounded healer, the hero, the great mother, the inner sage, exist within all of us as internal resources we can invoke when facing our deepest wounds. The wounded healer archetype is particularly relevant to our topic. It represents that paradoxical truth that it's precisely through our wounds that we develop the capacity to heal others and ourselves. We all have this archetype within us, waiting to be recognized and honored. Now let's talk about that inner healing ritual I promised at the beginning. It's not a magical formula or a shortcut. It's a deeply transformative process based on Jungian principles that, with consistent practice, can help you close those wounds that have remained open for too long. The first step is conscious recognition. Jung was emphatic that nothing can be transformed if it isn't first accepted. This means identifying your wounds with honesty and courage. What are those painful patterns that repeat in your life? What are those emotions you avoid at all costs? What aspects of yourself have you rejected or ignored? This isn't an intellectual exercise, but a deep immersion in your experience. You may discover wounds of abandonment, rejection, betrayal, humiliation, or injustice. The important thing isn't to categorize, but to feel and recognize. As Jung said, it is not what you are that matters, but what you realize you are. The second step is dialogue with the shadow. Jung developed a technique called active imagination that allows establishing a conscious dialogue with aspects of our unconscious. In practical terms, This involves giving voice to your wounds, asking them, "What do you need? What do you want to tell me? What lesson are you trying to teach me?" This dialogue may seem strange at first, but it's deeply therapeutic. You're recognizing those parts of you that have been silenced and giving them space to express themselves, not for them to take control, but to finally be heard. The third step is symbolic integration. Jung firmly believed in the power of symbols to heal the psyche. Our unconscious speaks the language of symbols, not rational logic. That's why creating a personal ritual that symbolizes reconciliation with your wounds can be incredibly powerful. This could be as simple as writing a letter to your wounded self and then burning it as a symbol of transformation. Or it could be more elaborate, such as creating an artistic representation of your wound and then transforming it in some way that represents healing. The important thing is that the ritual has personal meaning for you. The fourth step is perhaps the most challenging: conscious action. Jung insisted that true transformation must manifest in the real world, not just in our inner world. This means making decisions and taking actions aligned with your true self, even when these decisions challenge the patterns established by your wounds. If your abandonment wound has led you to desperately cling to toxic relationships, conscious action might involve establishing healthy boundaries. If your not being enough wound has kept you in a constant state of exhausting self-demand, conscious action might be allowing yourself to rest and celebrate your achievements, no matter how small. And finally, the fifth step: surrender and trust in the process. Jung understood that there's a wisdom in the unconscious that goes beyond our conscious control. Part of the healing process involves trusting this innate wisdom, allowing the process to unfold at its own pace and in its own ways. This doesn't mean passivity, but a form of active participation that recognizes the limits of our control. As Jung expressed it, the acceptance of oneself is the essence of the moral problem and the epitome of a whole outlook on life. Now, it's important to understand that this healing ritual isn't something you do once and that's it. It's an ongoing process, a commitment to your own growth and transformation. Deep wounds rarely close all at once. They heal gradually as we expose them to the light of consciousness and give them the care they need. And here's another powerful perspective from Jung. Time doesn't heal all wounds. Consciousness does. You can spend decades avoiding confronting a wound, and it will remain as fresh as the first day. But when you bring consciousness to that wound, when you recognize it, listen to it, and integrate it, you begin a true healing process. There's something else Jung deeply understood. Our wounds aren't just personal. They also reflect the wounds of our family, our culture, and our society. Through what he called the collective unconscious, we carry not only our own experiences, but also the unresolved traumas and patterns of our ancestors. This explains why sometimes we feel wounds that seem to have no origin in our direct experiences. Perhaps you carry a pain that belongs to your mother, or your grandfather, or even older generations of your lineage. Recognizing this isn't to blame others, but to expand our understanding and compassion toward ourselves and those who came before us. This transgenerational perspective of our wounds also offers an extraordinary opportunity. By healing your wounds, you not only free yourself, you also contribute to the healing of your lineage and, by extension, to the collective healing of humanity. As Jung expressed it, the meeting with oneself is, at first, the meeting with one's own shadow. Until one has looked the opposites in the face, one has not reached the first step toward individuation. Now let me address some common objections that might be arising in your mind as you listen to this. Perhaps you're thinking, my wounds are too deep to be healed. Jung found in his clinical practice that no wound is so deep that it can't be transformed through consciousness and love. It's not about eliminating scars, those will remain as witnesses to your journey, but about allowing those wounds to stop bleeding and controlling your life. Or maybe you think, I don't have time to immerse myself in this kind of inner work. Consider this. How much time and energy do your unhealed wounds consume? How many relationships, opportunities, and moments of joy have you lost due to the destructive patterns generated by these wounds? As Jung pointed out, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Or perhaps you feel, I'm afraid of what I might find if I look too deeply inside myself. This fear is natural and understandable. Jung himself experienced periods of intense confrontation with his unconscious that brought him to the edge of what many would consider a psychotic crisis. But he emerged from this experience with a wisdom and understanding that transformed not only his life but the entire field of psychology. The fear you feel is part of the process. It's the natural resistance to deep transformation. As Jung expressed it, there is no consciousness without sacrifice of something. But what you sacrifice, your defenses, your illusions, your limiting patterns, is infinitely less than what you gain, your true self. And finally, perhaps you wonder, can I really heal completely? The Jungian perspective offers us a nuanced answer. Complete healing, in the sense of eliminating all traces of our wounds, is not necessarily the goal, nor even possible. Our wounds, once integrated, become part of our wholeness, sources of wisdom and compassion. True healing, from this perspective, isn't the absence of scars, but the transformation of the meaning we give them. It's moving from being victims of our wounds to being conscious witnesses of our own capacity for resilience and transformation. As Jung said, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. This is perhaps his most liberating teaching. Your wounds don't define you, your conscious response to them does. Now, everything we've discussed so far might seem overwhelming. Where to start this profound journey of healing? Jung offers us clear guidance. Begin where you are, with full honesty and compassion toward yourself. You don't need sophisticated tools or esoteric knowledge to start this path. You mainly need two things: the willingness to see the truth of your experience, however painful it may be, and the compassion to accompany yourself in that process without judgment or condemnation. You can begin simply by observing your emotional reactions in everyday life. What situations trigger disproportionate responses in you? What patterns repeat in your relationships? What recurring dreams appear in your nights? These are messages from your unconscious, clues that guide you toward the wounds that need attention. Keeping a dream journal was one of the practices Jung fervently recommended. Dreams, according to his perspective, are the direct language of the unconscious, a royal road to the parts of ourselves we've relegated to the shadow. By recording and reflecting on your dreams, you establish a bridge between your consciousness and those inner depths where your wounds reside, and also your most powerful resources. Meditation, especially the kind that cultivates the ability to observe without judging, can also be an invaluable tool in this process. Not to escape your wounds, but to create the inner space necessary to confront them with equanimity and compassion. And perhaps most importantly, seek community. Jung understood that although the journey of individuation is deeply personal, we aren't meant to travel it completely alone. Finding people who understand this process, who can hold space for your vulnerability without trying to fix you, is an invaluable resource. This could be a Jungian therapist, a personal growth group, friends who are on similar paths, or even online communities centered on deep inner work. The important thing is that you don't isolate yourself in your healing process. As Jung noted, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. As you advance on this path, you'll begin to notice subtle but profound changes. Dreams that were once disturbing begin to transform. Relationships that seemed trapped in destructive patterns begin to flow in new ways. Situations that used to trigger intense reactions lose their power over you. These are signs that the process is working, that your wounds are beginning to close. Not because you've ignored or suppressed them, but because you've given them exactly what they needed: your conscious attention, your understanding, and your unconditional love. And here's a beautiful paradox that Jung deeply understood. It's precisely when we stop fighting against our wounds, when we stop seeing them as enemies to conquer, that they truly begin to heal. As he expressed it, what you resist persists. What you accept transforms. This acceptance isn't passive resignation. It's an act of deep courage and love toward yourself. It's the recognition that all parts of you, even the most painful, the most shameful, the ones you've tried to hide for years, deserve to be seen, heard, and loved. And when you achieve this, when you manage to embrace even your most rejected aspects with that unconditional compassion, you discover a freedom you may never have imagined possible. The freedom to be completely yourself, without apology, without hiding, without fragmenting yourself to fit into others' expectations. This is the promise of Jungian work, not a life without pain or challenges, but a life lived with integrity, authenticity, and a deep connection with all dimensions of your being. A life where your wounds, transformed by the light of consciousness, become sources of wisdom, compassion, and purpose. So I ask you again, are you ready to begin or deepen this journey toward healing your deepest wounds? Are you willing to look with courage and compassion at what you've been avoiding? Are you prepared to discover the hidden gifts in your most painful experiences? Remember, we don't seek perfection but wholeness. We don't pursue a life without scars, but one where our scars tell stories of transformation and resilience. As Jung expressed it, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. If this message has resonated with you, if you feel that inner call toward deeper healing, share this video with someone you believe could benefit from these teachings. Leave in the comments which part impacted you most or what wounds you're ready to begin healing. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and hit the bell to receive notifications of new videos that will help you deepen your personal growth and inner healing process. Remember that this journey doesn't have to be solitary. We're building a community of people committed to their inner transformation, and your voice, your experience, and your wisdom are invaluable to this collective space of healing. In our next video, we'll explore more deeply specific techniques inspired by Jung for working with your dreams as tools for inner healing. So make sure to stay tuned. Thank you for your presence, your openness, and your courage. As Jung would remind us, the simple fact of being willing to look inward is already a revolutionary act in a world obsessed with the external. Your journey toward inner healing not only transforms you, it contributes to the collective healing that our world so desperately needs. As Jung expressed it, a change in the individual is the beginning of change in the world. Until our next meeting, remember, your wounds are not your destiny. They are portals to your deepest transformation, and you have everything you need to traverse them with grace, courage, and love.